This episode of Simple Civics Greenville County is brought to you by first5sc.org. If you're a parent of a young child, you know how difficult it can be to find the right resources at the right time. Childcare, getting your baby screened for vision or hearing, or links to community resources. First5sc.org can help. Parents and community partners can start the search by visiting first5sc.org to learn about local services and free resources available in Greenville, and link directly with the organizations that provide those supports. Best of all, first5sc.org is free. Just log in, answer a few questions, and in minutes you can see if you qualify for more than 40 programs and services, all at no cost to you. And you can easily apply online, and in many cases, services can begin immediately. Visit first5sc.org for more information. This episode is posting on Independence Day, when we celebrate the birth of our country. It's a day filled with patriotism and all things America. Every one of us has an origin story of our family's connection to the United States. Some came to the U.S. in pursuit of the American dream. Others were brought here not of their own will. And of course, some are descended from indigenous people who were here all along. According to the Pew Research Center, the United States has more immigrants than any other country in the world. More than 40 million people living in the United States today were born in another country. Today, we will talk to two of those immigrants who live here in Greenville County and who are not just grateful to be part of this country, but who also give so much. Magda DeSantis came to the United States in 1984 when she was 23 years old, escaping the communist regime in Romania. And Diana Hoyos Lopez is now 23, and she came here in 2001 when she was just a baby. They'll talk about their experiences here in the United States, the lengthy process it takes to become a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and will share their thoughts on the American dream. This episode is slightly longer than our usual offerings, and I'm grateful to both Magda and Diana for their time. I'm so glad to be here today with Diana Hoyos Lopez and Magda DeSantis to talk about their experience being part of the United States of America. This episode's posting on Independence Day, and it seemed like a great time to talk about the immigrant experience. So let's start first with Magda. Tell us about where you came from and how you got to the United States. I know it's a long journey and one with a lot of challenges, but tell us about what led you to leave Romania and how did you get here?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited. I'm always excited to share the story, how I escaped from Romania. And that was in 1984, and our country was ruled by a communist party. And Nicolae Ceausescu was president for 25 years. So everybody was afraid to do any mistakes, talking to friends, talking about politics. You're always worried about what's going on. I was 23 when I was starting to understand life a little bit. We had a lot of people listening to you while you talk, so you're really worried about it. My uncle tried in 1981 to escape. He was caught at the border with Yugoslavia and Romania, and he went back to jail in Romania, and it's not an easy jail. And after he got out of the jail, he shared with my father the map that he followed. So we're very blessed in that sense, because somebody could share with you how to get out of Romania, and everybody wanted to. My dad always said, I want to get to America, or I hope Americans are coming and save Romania from the Communist Party. So my journey was long. We ended up in 84. We escaped from Romania, and it was a 4 hours walk. And you're always worried because they were having guards on the border. So we thought early in the morning, the guards are not careful. They were still sleeping, but wasn't that, because when you step on the ground, lights were going out.
Oh my gosh.
You think of 4th of July going lights out. You don't want that light.
You don't want these fireworks.
You don't want that fireworks, because they could tell people were trying to escape to freedom. And a lot of people did it that way. So we were in Yugoslavia, and once we got there with one shoe left in Romania, I always laugh about it because I was without the shoes at the end of the day. One shoe was in Romania, left on the ground running, and one got with me to Yugoslavia. But at that time, you didn't care because you wanted to get to the freedom and to a better life, in sense of like you're free spiritually. You're free to do what you really want to do, not be controlled every second. So we were in Yugoslavia in a refugee camp, political refugee camp for 4 months. And waiting, we had to go to the ambassador of America there to give our story. And why do we wanted to be here, to go to America? And took about 4 months. So we were just waiting. And meanwhile, I don't know what we did, but 4 months was slow. So overnight, though, in Yugoslavia, something was going on, and they were trying to give all the refugees back to Romania for the exchange of money. So American government said, no, these people were accepted by us, so we can send them back to America. Now they are allowed to go because they are really persecuted. So once we are accepted, they said, okay, tonight, just stay in line. We took a passport paper, just a little paper with your dates on it. Yeah, I have it right here, actually.
Yes, she's holding up the paper. I wish y'all could see it.
And that's in 84. Can you imagine that? And they said, no, they can go. And next day, they literally put us in the plane, took us with the bus from the immigration where we were holding for 4 months. And you were wondering at that time if you really go to where they said, you were like not trusting, or they send you back to Romania. Where do you go? So we are really holding on that they are telling us the truth, and they take us to the airport, and they did. So they took us to airport, my first flight. I never had a flight till then. They couldn't fly us directly to America, but because whatever was going to Yugoslavia, Romania, they decided to take us quick to Italy, to a safe place. So we are outside Rome once we were taking the flight for 1 month. So we got to Italy, and there was wonderful because we got to visit couple. Well, we were begging people to give us a ride to a church in Italy. And we got to the one that is called St. Lantrum Church. So I always remember, it's the only place I remember being there, because when you're in a country that you don't speak the language, you don't know people, it's impossible at that age, 23, and not really, we were not traveling that much at that time. So that was my first memory of like, okay, this is freedom.
This is
now
real.
We can, yes.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really, that first step to be allowed to come to America was amazing.
Oh my goodness. And then after that month, you made it to the United States.
After this month, yep, a week before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So Thanksgiving is my big favorite holiday.
Oh, that's so great.
Because we're smelling turkey when we got to America. My brother was already here because he escaped 2 years before that, and he was preparing turkey, the mashed potato, the corn, and everything else. So I have that memory and the smell still in my head. To this day, I'm saying Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. And I had already like close to 30 people to dinner.
Oh my goodness. That's so great. So Diana, tell us about your family's arrival story.
Right. I think the most common experience for a lot of Mexican immigrants is they want to pursue after the American dream. And that's exactly what my parents wanted to do. But in the aspect of they wanted to give me a better future. I was brought here to the United States when I was a year old. It was a difficult process. My parents came here to Greenville first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because what happened was my uncle came here, and my parents essentially met up with him here in Greenville. And so
this was home.
Since 2001, this has been, Greenville has been all that I've known.
I do feel like so many folks' stories are that someone comes before them and then the rest of the family follows. I know that my family's story on my mom's side is an Ellis Island story. And so, folks came over and then other folks followed behind. And,
right.
Someone says, hey, this place is good. Come join me here. So Magda, you got settled then in Reading, Pennsylvania. And tell us a little bit about your experience growing up there.
I was in heaven. Just to be in America was very hard with the language because we did not know it. So that part, we had to really work hard on it. So I remember I'll learn 10 words in one day, and the next day I'll repeat them again. The next day we'll go a little bit to school in the evening. I think people, when they come here, the best it is if they can get a job with a group that it's American group. Like you'll go. My first job was at a fast food, Arby's. So I begged them to take me to work. I said, I know how to cook, and I really like the kitchen work, and I could really work hard. And my brother came with me one time for the interview, and they said, well, she needs a bit better English. So I kept trying to really study as fast as you can, but it's not easy to get the language. So I was going evenings to school with my dad, so we really were getting a lot of words, but it's hard to put them together. When you hear words, but you're not so sure what they mean. So finally, they got me to the Arby's job. They used to say, we appreciate Magda. They'll switch back and forth because in the paper I'm Magdalena. And they said, we appreciate you. And I was like, okay, did I do something wrong? No. But I really learned quick. We didn't have in Romania ketchup and lettuce to put on a hamburger. We didn't do it that way. So I took a menu and I studied the menu at home. Next day I went and I said, I hope I can make a sandwich. Slowly I did. But I work hard and I really enjoy it. And the people at work, I found them, they were so warm. That's my first memories of being around people in America. They're all warm and kind and nice and patient, because if you don't know the English, it's kind of hard to communicate, but they were patient. So we got the first job, and then I went to school. I wanted to become a registered nurse, and that went well, but I was too soft inside. So I was starting to really cry when I saw too many patients, because I went to a nursing home to work because they were sending you then free to school, and that was the key. So I left the job. I said, it's good, but not now, maybe another time. So I went to a food business because I really like food. My mom was doing a lot of cooking, and she had a little store with lots of donuts, 1,000 donuts. She would make 1,000 donuts a day.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a big, heavy industry in the city we grew up after we have to leave the countryside. So she'll make, people will walk, lots of walking people. People will walk up and down to go to work early in the morning. By 6, you better have your donuts ready because they're nice and hot. But slowly, I felt like home. We started to ask about how many years you have to be here to apply for the citizenship. So they said 5 years. You better have a job if you're here, and we did. And then you'd be a good citizen. And we tried to learn about the history. So when 5 years went by, and we went to the immigration to apply, and they gave us a brochure. They said, this is for you to study. So you take it home and study, and then when they send you a date, you're going to the immigration service for your exam. So with the exam, you have to know the history, but you do have a book to study, and then also you should have a little bit writing knowledge. So to this day, I remember when I went to exam, I really studied hard the book. So, you want to pass. And I passed it for the first time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was so happy. And then to this day, I even put today a note. I said, I remember what they asked me to write. And it wasn't a big sentence, but they want to be sure that you are learning to write. So they were saying, write as the sky is blue. That was my pass exam on the writing.
That was excellent.
Yep. I thought they'll say a big phrase. I was like, oh, dear, what do I do? And it was easier than I thought.
Oh, that's great.
So we passed that. So that was very good with the exam. So for anybody who would get ready for the citizenship, that's what you have to do.
That's a lot. That is a lot to prepare. Okay, so it's interesting to think of you, Magda, arriving when you're 23 and already growing up speaking Romanian and having to learn a whole new language. But you, on the other hand, Diana, grew up around English in the United States. So tell us about your experience growing up here in Greenville.
well, this is what my mom says. She says that I picked up the language really fast, even though, at home it was strictly Spanish. And this is funny because I remember one of the first books that I read as a little 4-year-old was, I think it's the Brown Bear.
Yes. The Eric Carle, Brown Bear, what do you see? Oh.
And I wish I still had that book, but I remember it so well because I think it was one of my teachers. She personally came to our apartment and she gave the book to me. And I don't know how they were able to have a conversation with my parents, but she was essentially explaining, since she doesn't know any English, like, I want to give this to her so that she can start, little by little. And I'm really grateful for those teachers. Even though I don't remember much of my kindergarten years, I was really grateful for them because they were very patient with me. And I even remember my first day in kindergarten, like, I did not want to be there at all.
Where did you go to kindergarten?
I went to Lake Forest. Yeah, I went to Lake Forest. But yeah, I think my mom tells her, she was like, yeah, you did not want to go to school at all. And that persisted for several years.
Yes, some children find those first days very scary.
Yeah. And especially, how I mentioned to you, I only strictly understood Spanish at home, and coming to a school where everybody strictly speaks English, it was very confusing for me. But luckily, my teachers were very patient with me. They immediately put me with the ESOL teacher, and like, she was the one, leading me throughout the whole process of learning English. And all of my years growing up here in Greenville have been great. My elementary school years, they were a little rough because my parents got divorced when I was at a young age. They got divorced when I was 5. And so growing up, I lived with a single immigrant mother, and she always had to switch jobs because, one job either didn't pay her enough, or another the job, she would experience a lot of discrimination. So every year of elementary school, I went to a different school.
Oh my gosh.
And so when I made it to my 4th year, I think my 4th year, I was at Westcliff. We had finally settled into an apartment. I think it was an apartment, yeah. And ending up my 4th year, I told my mom, I was like, can I please stay here? Like, just one more year. And then, I'll start my years at middle school. Luckily, things went smooth, and I was able to at least spend my final year of elementary at Westcliff and, still stay with my friends that I made in my 4th year.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then you head to middle school, which everyone knows is an easy time. Ha.
Oh, yeah.
So Magda talked about her path to citizenship of 5 years, studying the book, taking the test, passing the difficult writing exam. Tell us about your path as you were here without documentation, but wanting to work, wanting to go to college, and what barriers were in your way and where you are now.
I want to say my whole story begins in high school. It was my last few months of my sophomore year. I was starting to think about college and what I wanted to pursue in the future. At the same time, I was still trying to grasp the idea of being undocumented. My parents had told me that I was undocumented, but I could never really understand what that meant.
Because you're just a person hanging out in Greenville. You're going to school, you're going to the lunchroom, you're enjoying the parks just like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't until I was starting to plan, applying to colleges that at the same time I was going to apply for DACA. I set up an appointment with my then lawyer, and she was helping me fill out my application and such. And that's when it hit me like a brick of what it meant to be undocumented, because then I realized, I don't have a social, I don't have legal presence here. And if I don't apply for DACA, like I won't be able to go to college unless if I go, but I would have to pay everything out of pocket, which in what universe would that be possible? But luckily, I was able to apply for DACA, and I was approved. So I was a DACA student for, I want to say at least 8 years, I think. But it was a pretty long time that I was a DACA student. Just reminiscing during those times of being like a DACA student is really rough because in high school, even when I became a DACA student, there was still a lot of barriers placed in front of me. Because as a DACA student here in South Carolina, you can still go to college, but you aren't offered in-state tuition, only qualify for out-of-state tuition. You don't apply for in-state financial aid or federal at all. And so you can only really rely on scholarships, and you have to hope to God that a college will give you a good, amount of scholarships. And then, in all honesty, I grew very depressed because of this. I was depressed for a very long time because I was like, I don't know how I'll be able to achieve this dream, because the sole reason my parents brought me here to the U.S. was, to achieve a greater education, to go to college and get a good career. But if I can't do this, then what was the point of them bringing me here? But luckily, at that point in time, this nonprofit organization called Hispanic Alliance, they came to visit my school, and they offered a program for Hispanic students called Student Dreamers Alliance. And so because I brought up these concerns of mine to my teachers at school, they essentially reached out to them, and they came up with this program to offer for the students, and specifically for students like me, because they saw that DACA / undocumented students like myself were really struggling, and they really needed some encouragement to keep pushing forward. And so I applied for the program. I was accepted into the program, and I am very, very, very grateful for that program and for Hispanic Alliance in general, because all of my teachers during that time and everybody from the staff, they were so encouraging to me, and they showered me with so much love, and they really gave me the push that I needed during that time and helped me realize, if I really put my mind into it, if I put in the effort, I can make my dreams a reality. And that sounds a little corny, but that's what it means to be a dreamer. And so after I graduated from the program, I started to apply for colleges, and I was accepted to several ones. Eventually, then I applied for a full ride scholarship called Golden Doors. At that time, it was only for DACA and undocumented students, but now it's opened up more. And so now it's open for temporary protected status immigrants. I applied for the full ride scholarship, and I applied because I was like, I know some colleges have offered me some scholarships, but it's not enough to afford the rest of it. So I applied, and my teachers greatly encouraged me to apply. And it was a long process because I had to send a very long essay as to why I feel like I was deserving for the scholarship, send out my resume and my transcript, and then I also had to make a small video, like talking about myself and my experience and whatnot. And finally, I made it to the first round. At the first round, I had to go to North Carolina, and I was so shocked by the amount of students that were there applying for the same scholarship. And this round, what we had to do was we had to get interviewed by several different people in the span of 5 minutes. And then at the end, we had to give a small presentation. So after I had left that stage of my scholarship, it was now to the stage of where I just had to wait for the phone call and see if I got to the scholarship or not. And so I had to wait a month, and I was actually at a school meeting, and some of the staff from Greenville County schools came, and we were essentially, me and some other students were talking about our experience as a DACA and undocumented students, and I was one of those students. And so at that same day, I had received an email from Golden Doors saying, hey, if you have time today, we would love to give you a call and like follow up on your scholarship process. But we would love to talk to you over the phone. So I got very nervous. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be at this meeting though, but if you text me ahead of time, I can just step out of the meeting real quick and then I'll, pick up your call. And they told me, yeah, that's totally fine. I'm at this meeting, not even really paying attention to what's going on because I was like, am I going to get the scholarship or not? Like, I don't know. Like, it was very nerve-wracking. And so I finally get the text message from them saying, hey, like, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to call you. And I was like, okay. And so I had to tell my teacher at that time, Mr. Campbell, and I told him, hey, I have to step out for a second, like, you know what it's for. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. I step out and pick up the phone call. I was shaking and I was sweating. And they told me, congratulations. You are now a Golden Doors student, and we are so happy to tell you that you were one of many students that received the full ride scholarship. At that time, like I couldn't bring myself to cry yet because I was so
you were
shocked.
shaking, I'm sure.
I was so shocked. I was like, thank you so much. Like it was really a pleasure, like getting to meet you all and such. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity. They were like, yeah, of course. And again, congratulations. And I was like, thank you. And then the phone call. I go back to the meeting. And Mr. Campbell, he told me, so did you get it or not? And I was like, I did.
Oh,
and
my
then
goodness.
Everybody in the meeting like clapped for me.
Sure.
And that's when I bursted into tears.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That makes me want to burst into tears.
But yeah, I was very happy. And then afterwards, my mom picked me up from the meeting. And I told my mom I got the scholarship. And she was so ecstatic for me. And she immediately hugged me. We both, like how I am now, sobbing. But we were very happy, and she was very happy to me because she knew that this was going to be the beginning for my educational journey, especially being able to now go to college for free, that not many students have that privilege to do so. And especially as somebody as me who, only had DACA. That was really the start of my educational journey. I was able to go to Wingate University on a full ride scholarship thanks to Golden Doors. I actually started off as a nursing major because I've always had a passion for healthcare. But then I quickly realized, I don't think this is for me. So I instead majored in human services with a minor in Spanish. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and graduated with honors. And now I'm just still continuing to work in the healthcare field. And now my next big goal is to get my master's in public health.
And so, Magda, let's come back to you. You're not at the Arby's still. No, you worked at the Arby's. You got your citizenship, and how can you fast forward through those years since to where you are now?
I became an American citizenship, and then maybe a year in between. One morning I woke up and I said, my dream was in English. I was speaking in my dream in English. I knew I was an American citizen right then.
When you dreamed in English.
When I dreamed. But I did work hard for that citizenship, and I loved that I could do that and the dream. And then in between, I went to a job that somebody said, hey, we are short on lab technician for an orthodontic job. Somebody's retiring. She's from Poland, but she was working with me for this many years. Would you like to come and be trained by us for a year? And I looked, I said, this is a dreaming. I would love to work in a lab coat and and learn how to do retainers and to pour molds. And I said, I did not know what the job will really be, but for a whole year I was trained there, and they gave me a certificate, and I was a lab technician officially. And in between that, because I needed 2 jobs to make I wanted to buy a car, and I was so proud when I started driving. and I was taking in my own home. I bought a small home in between, and I was working with two handicapped people. They were mentally handicapped. They were 40 and 60 at that time. They were trying to have people live in your home. They were doing better than being in a group home. And I never had anybody in my life to know how to relate to that. So somebody was telling me, if I like to, they think I'm patient and I'm pleasant all the time, I'll do a good job at it. So I said, okay, I'll try. Take me to a family that has that situation. I'm always have to see what's going on. So they did, and I agree. I said, okay, I would love to have, in my home, because one of the condition was you have to have a full-time job, you have to be an American citizen, and then have this situation. So you're getting paid for, but I need that too. So I was very happy. So I was working 2 full-time jobs, and the boys were so thrilled. In fact, I had them so much that when Nathaniel and Sarah came into my life,
your children, your own children,
the boys were a little bit jealous because they're like, you're paying too much attention to this boy. She's mine, not yours, because they were at like 6-year-old mental, but they're wonderful people. I learned so much to be patient, and I changed them also. Because they were, at the beginning, it was very hard to deal with them, but then slowly, they were very wonderful. So in the morning, I'll go to the orthodontics office with Dr. Barron and White, and I always appreciate they gave me that job forever because it was a good job and good pension from them. So that was also to work. I learned the steps being in America, that you work and you work for your benefits when you get older. So that was my next couple years later on. Then later on, I start a family with the kids.
Yes, and that's its own full-time job.
That's
sure.
a different, whole different story.
Well, and so Diana, you now have permanent resident status. So how does that work? How did that come about, and what does it mean for you now?
My permanent residency process was pretty lengthy. It lasted for about 5 years. And it all came about because my dad had remarried to a U.S. citizen, and she petitioned for me. My stepmother petitioned for me. That took a very long time for UCIS to process. My immigration lawyer contacted us, and he told us, we need to get you to apply for this through advance parole. But the documentation, I think, only lasts 1 month. So you have a very tight time frame. I went to Mexico, and it was my very first time being there ever since I was a baby, and I wish I could have stayed longer. And so once I was able to receive my stamp on my passport that I finally came, quote unquote, the right way, it made my process go by a lot faster. It was up until this past February of this year, I received an approval notice from USCIS saying, basically, congratulations, you're permanent resident.
Oh my gosh. Yay.
Yeah.
I feel like we need fireworks for both of you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
My dad had called me over the phone, and he told me, I was like, you're joking. Like, this is it. You're like, stop playing with me. But he told me, yeah, I'm being serious. You're a permanent resident now. And I was like, again, I was in shock. And it wasn't until I told my mom that I'm finally a permanent resident, that's when she started bursting into tears too. And, I did, obviously, because it was a long time coming. But yeah, now I'm a permanent resident. Even now, it still doesn't feel real because being undocumented for so long, it still sits at the back of my mind, and it still doesn't feel real. And sometimes I feel like I'm still in that stage in my life. But then, I have my friends and family that always remind me, like, you don't have those restrictions anymore. Now more doors are opened for you. And before you had nothing holding you back, but now truly nothing can get in your way now.
You and your families both work so hard in pursuit of the American dream. So I'm curious to hear from both of you. What do you think about the American dream now after all you've been through? What does it mean to you? And is it still alive for you?
Still alive for me. And every time the voting coming for the president or for the local, to me, that it's mean I have the freedom and I'm going to vote. I'm there at the booth, first day, first morning. And I think everybody, if they think how lucky they are here, because I feel now I'm lucky, I can do that. And also I can talk without being afraid. I can go to jail if I talk something wrong, even, And because I saw my mom and dad, they a lot of times just communicate with paper. We did not even know why they were talking about it like that. But later we learned that they were afraid to even talk about what's going on in life. So just that, to be free to talk and to have friends, and you can joke about politics and you can joke about life.
Joking about politics is a regular American hobby.
So I don't take that too lightly, but I do hope that we all keep this country free, really. It's amazing. And even though when we ran across from Romania to Yugoslavia, they were shooting after us because we were stepping on the lights and knowing. So I feel like I'm a very lucky person to be in America and to have my family, that the kids, Sarah, Nathaniel, Matthew's stepson, they're born here, and Blaine, my husband, is American, and he's very patient with me. He learned a lot of things that I go and not back and forth. I go forth and back. I said, doesn't make sense the other way. I always mix my... So, and they know. And so I'm very proud American. So I appreciate every day being here. I do. I think every morning I open the door, the windows, I say, thank you, America, I'm here.
Oh, that's great.
So that's my story. I love it.
Diana, how about you and the American dream?
I mean, for me personally, the American dream is still pretty much alive. Yes. But I think the context of the American dream is also, it can have both. Well, I view it as both something positive, but also something negative. Unfortunately, the American dream can only go so far, especially if you're an undocumented immigrant. Unfortunately, you don't have the same rights as a U.S. citizen, and that's what makes life so difficult for, other undocumented immigrants. That's a negative aspect of the American dream, is that, sometimes there's this false idea that, you can achieve whatever you want here in America. But when you really look at it, sometimes that's not possible. There are also some good things about the American dream, and it's good in the way that no matter what immigrant I have interacted with, talked with, they're the reason why the American dream exists and why they're so resilient and why they are able to achieve that dream. And it's not because the opportunities are offered to them, it's because they make the opportunities for themselves. And so for me, that's really what the American dream means for me. It can be something negative, but it can also be something really positive.
Well, I mean, I think another way of saying what you just said is that it's like the American dream is as much about the dreamer and how they respond to the opportunity that either they believe is there or want to make happen for themselves. It's the going out and doing. Well, I can say that I am just so grateful to have both of you all here in our community, because I think another thing that makes America great is when we come together and we do stuff well to solve problems together. And so I'm so grateful that you are both here in this community in Greenville. And I'm so, so grateful for you both sharing your stories about your being in Greenville and just for all that you do.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, and happy Independence Day. Thanks so much, y'all.
Simple Civics Greenville County is a project of Greater Good Greenville. Greater Good Greenville was catalyzed by the merger of the Nonprofit Alliance and the Greenville Partnership for Philanthropy. You can learn more on our website at greatergoodgreenville.org.